So today we don't usually store a lot of information on premises. Normally we're storing it in a cloud environment, whether that be a Google Cloud, an AWS, a server somewhere. And therefore, we're not necessarily talking about a model of security where you erect, the Great Wall of China around your systems and protect it with a huge firewall, through which very few people have access. Instead, we're talking about cloud security. This means that you are protecting your endpoints. That means your computers, your smartphones, any sort of device which is going to have an interaction with your data or systems is something that's going to be your primary attack vector for any hacker that's attempting to get into those data or systems. So protecting endpoints can be broken down into a few different ways, but mostly we can define it in two categories. The first would be more of a software type protection, and the secondly would be the physical protection of the endpoints themselves. In software security, we're talking about endpoints that are clean and that their security is monitored. This would mean that the endpoints generally, ideally, are only used for professional purposes by employees, whether they be smartphones or computers, and that, of course, that antivirus and anti-malware have been installed on these systems to ensure that you have a visibility on the state of their security. Despite the fact that cybersecurity sounds like a tech function in general, it's actually quite contextualized physically, and we can see it in the real world. I mean, a computer physically exists in front of you in the same way that a building does, or that a door needs to be locked after you leave the house. So when we talk about securing endpoints, we're also talking about securing the physical devices themselves. This can include a number of things. For example, having a privacy screen on computers for anyone who's traveling. If employees often take trains or public transport or airplanes and they work in these environments, ensuring that their screens are not visible is important. Another important aspect can be the use of Wi-Fi. Ensuring that employees know not to use unsecured public Wi-Fi to communicate confidential information over unencrypted systems is also important. If you're going to be in an airport and use the internet in the airport, maybe using a mobile hotspot is a more secure way to ensure that your communication is not going to be intercepted. Additionally, most companies, not all, but most companies have offices. These offices themselves also need to be secured to ensure that if computers or other sensitive endpoints are kept on the premises, that only the right people have the right access. This can be done by a number of methods: keypads, badges, ensuring that you have a perimeter around your building security, having employees challenge unrecognized people who enter their floors, having a reception who actively engages in the security of your building can all be important ways in securing the contents of your offices. So the most important vulnerability for any organization is always going to be the human factor. Most systems today are designed to be generally pretty robust and to be fairly secure themselves, but of course the most vulnerable aspect is the individual who is going to be using the account that's going to be accessing the system. One of the most common ways that hackers exploit human weakness is through a type of attack known as social engineering. An excellent example of this is a German film that was released in the 2000s called No System is Secure, in which the BND, the German version of the CIA, is infiltrated by a group of hackers using a very interesting type of social engineering attack on a secretary. In the film, the hackers go through the trash of the BND to find that a particular secretary likes cat cards. They then create an email account, a false email account of a relative of the secretary's, which they find online, of course, publicly available information. They use this email account to send links to cat videos to the secretary, which are, of course, false links. They're spoofed, they're infected, and they get into the system by the secretary clicking on these links that she believes to be simply videos sent by a relative. This example is excellent to use because it demonstrates how a hack can involve absolutely zero technical hacks as we might originally conceive them. In general, when an organization is penetrated, it's not necessarily done via some person sitting in front of a computer tapping away at green letters on a black screen. In general, we're talking about hacks that exploit the fact that people are generally trusting and that most employees in companies are not and will never be technically trained. So what can we do to ensure that our employees are aware of the threats that they face and understand how to mitigate these threats in the course of their daily work? Of the top 5 vulnerabilities that are generally exploited by hackers today, the first 4 have to do, in general, with email. Email is a place where a lot of business is done today and a lot of confidential documents are traded, especially in the legal profession. And it's also an incredibly insecure method of communication. One of the most common types of email-based attacks is a phishing attack. A phishing attack is one where an attacker will impersonate some sort of account that an employee might normally interact with. This can be a client, a supplier, or even another member of the organization, especially someone from IT or perhaps someone from C-level. The employee will be prompted to either open an attachment, which is of course infected, or will be prompted to click on a link, which is a link to a false website, which will ask the employee to enter credit card information or perhaps a password. The only way to mitigate phishing attacks is to train employees to recognize the signs of a phishing attack and train them to report these attacks to the relevant teams. The only way to mitigate a phishing attack is to ensure that employees are able to recognize the signs of an attack and then report this attack to the relevant parts of your organization. For example, trustworthy suppliers and clients will of course never be asking for employee passwords or for credit card information via email. Employees should also be looking for any irregularities in external communications. An outdated logo, a misspelled email address, or any of these other sorts of things which will allow the employee to identify the fact that the external email is fraudulent. If not, you'll be sending credit card details and passwords to apple.com with 3 Ps, which will of course be a spoofed website created to send these passwords and credit card information to hackers. We hope that these videos have highlighted some important aspects of cybersecurity for you and your organization. And if you'd like to learn more about other parts of the process of digital transformation for legal functions, go to the Legalcluster channel.